we got to Prem finals, we got to Heineken finals, European finals, and lost by 3 points in a Heineken final. Does that make me any less of a champion than the guy who won it by 3 points? Probably not, but he got a winner's medal, I got a runners-up medal. But as long as my actions match what I'm trying to be, that's the difference. And I don't think you're ever going to be a champion, and you're never going to have the drive if you don't have the hunger for it, because it's so competitive, and you can take that into any walk of life. You're never going to get, you can be successful, of course you can, but you're never going to be at the top of where you want to be if you haven't got the drive and the hunger and the obsession for it. For me, it's the big piece around knowing how the players feel, but with a collaboration and knowing when to push and when to pull back. Like having that feel of the group instead of go, push, keep pushing, or they all drop off, or we go too easy and we don't push them hard enough that we don't maximise what they've got.
Welcome to another episode of the Shaping Champions podcast, where we explore what it takes to shape the champion within, become the greatest version of yourself, and succeed at whatever it is that you do in life. It's me, Jimmy Davis. We're back, episode 10. As ever, I'm joined by the man with the know-how, the man with the brains of the operation. It's Michelle St. Patrick Hewitt. How are you, sir?
I am good, Mr. Jimmy Davis, and as ever, looking forward to chopping this one up and getting into the kind of latest conversation about shaping champions. And I'm intrigued with this one because it's a different field, a different sphere. So it's going to be very interesting to see where we go with this one.
Indeed, it will. So without further ado, I'll introduce this week's guest. A man who, for 16 years, was a formidable opponent for anyone that faced him on a rugby pitch, consistently ranking as one of the most frequent carriers of the ball in English club rugby. He's a 4-time premiership winner, a 2-time Heineken Cup runner-up, and a former England international. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome to the show Jordan Crane. Good evening, Jordan. How are you, sir?
Hi, Jimmy. All good, mate? All good.
It's an absolute delight to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak to us. First one I'm going to ask you, Jordan, what does it mean to you to be a champion?
Like, strange question, really, because you don't really think about it, and it probably doesn't define you as a person. Like, you look back at those things, like when we're at Leicester, we're winning those trophies and stuff like that. You think it's just going to happen every year. We're probably young, and where was the next one? Where was the next one? And then, like, as you get older and you reflect, especially as you finish playing, you're like, what did I actually achieve? And obviously, a lot of that stuff I managed to achieve a lot. But for me now, I reflect with our players. It's like, what does it mean to be a champion? And do you have to win a trophy? Do you have to have the accolades to be a champion? And I don't think you do. I think the more that you look at it, the more that you chase it, it's more around the way that you behave. So, your behaviors, the way that you conduct yourself, the way that you train, the way that you live your life. We talk a lot about championship standards in training. So you don't have to be a champion to train at a championship standard level and not accept a certain level from other people and yourself. So it was great that I managed to reflect and have the silverware and things like that. But for me now, what we're chasing is that championship mindset and being able to live that daily almost.
Yeah, that's so fascinating to hear. So do you feel like there's almost like a redefining of that word, of that term, that phrase within sport to a degree?
100%. Like, you see so much stuff on the internet, all of it about what it means to be a champion and all of that. But everyone's chasing the same goal. So in rugby, everyone's chasing in England is chasing to win a premiership. So everyone wants to be it, but it takes a lot of sacrifice to get there. And how do you get there? Is what you do every day. So you might get to we got to Prem finals, we got to Heineken finals, European finals, and lost by 3 points in a Heineken final. Does that make me any less of a champion than the guy who won it by 3 points? Probably not, but he got a winner's medal, I got a runners-up medal. But as long as my actions match what I'm trying to be, that's the difference.
And have you sort of reached that stage of your career now, Jordan, where you can reflect on those sort of journeys that you took? Like, for instance, that journey of getting to a final and all of the things that you gained as a result of that. Do you sort of do you attach that to the word champion?
I attach the experiences that I had to try and help the boys who I'm coaching now to know where the level is, to be able to get there. So it's kind of I don't attach the experiences to being a champion, because you don't have to necessarily sort of get to that level to be a champion. We have guys in our team who have that mindset, have the ability to call themselves a champion in the way that they behave and conduct themselves, but they don't necessarily. We've not won anything, so can they call themselves champion or not? But it's more around the mindset for me.
Jordan, it's almost like you could see where I was going to go next, because obviously, you're involved in the kind of like academy system now and coaching, and I'm sure you've got your own journey that you're wishing to go on in that field. But if we take it back ever so slightly to when you would have been a youngster, I'm not saying you're not young now, but when you would have been like a teenager, young adult, etc., what was critical, or potentially who was critical to create that mindset for you, or what you would perceive as a champion mindset? And I guess I say that in the context of now you're imparting knowledge to youngsters themselves coming up through the system. So I'm just intrigued to know what shaped your mindset.
Yeah, so I think grew up on an estate. We literally, sport was everything to us. I had an older brother by 2 years. We played football non-stop every day down the park, doing it against older kids, and that just bred the competitor, the absolute, like, you had to fight for everything. You had to do everything. Hated losing, like, especially to my brother's friends and stuff like that. And then that drove me as a sportsman. So whatever I did, so I played football till I was 14. At 14, then decided, me and my brother were both in the West Bromwich Albion Academy, played in goal. I went to high school, and my whole friendship group changed, and they all played rugby, and made the county rugby team, and then decided, like, I fancy this is a bit of me. So my whole sporting path changed within a year. Now my focus becomes solely on, I'm going to make it as a professional rugby player. And that was my drive, and that was what I was about. And I've got a young son now, and he's obsessed with football. But I definitely find, like, if you want to be successful at something, you have to have that passion to be able to do it and go out and do it, whether it's by yourself, whether it's with people. Like, there's a lot of people who love sport, but it's more of a recreational thing. And I don't think you're ever going to be a champion, and you're never going to have the drive if you don't have the hunger for it, because it's so competitive, and you can take that into any walk of life. You're never going to get. You can be successful, of course you can, but you're never going to be at the top of where you want to be if you haven't got the drive and the hunger and the obsession for it.
Just quickly, just off the back of that, then it's maybe going a bit too far in the story, but it's based off what you just said there. Do you feel you had that hunger by the time you got to Leicester with the championship winning team, or did that atmosphere at Leicester take your hunger and your drive up, and not you didn't even know existed beforehand? Like, I guess what I mean is, when you join a champion team, do you uncover even more champion traits, so to speak?
No, I believe I always had it. I went to a boarding school in Bristol at sixth form. I got offered a full scholarship to go there. We didn't lose a game in 2 years. That was the mindset of our team. We did not lose. We won the national final by 50 points. So, that shaped me more on my journey than when I got to professional rugby. My mindset was that I'm a winner and I deserve to be here. So I had an option when I left school. I could have signed for Gloucester or I could have signed for Leeds. And at the time, they're both in the Premiership. Gloucester were the bigger name, offered me a little bit more money, not much. But I went to Leeds. I signed for Leeds for £4,000 for the year, and my decision was strictly based on that I can play now at 18, coming out of school, and I believe that I was good enough, and I believe that that was the best opportunity for me. So my mindset was to go there and play at 18. I'd never walked into professional setup before that, only been at school. And then 2 years later, I signed for Leicester.
It sounds like what you're getting at, Jordan, is that motivation, desire, hunger is intrinsic within you. And if that's the case, where do you think that comes from? Like, can you put it solely down to playing really competitively with your brothers and your mates, or is there something more to it?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because it's like nature or nurture. Is it the environment that you grew up in? And it's the $1 million question. But like, we've got guys who have come from absolute privileged backgrounds, had absolutely everything, and their hunger and drive is right up there. And then you've had guys who've come, done it the hard way, done that, get there, and then they struggle to maintain their drive. So when you go that way, it's hard to pinpoint what exactly it is. Obviously, experience shape the direction that you're going in, but for me, it's got to be something inside the person from the get-go.
And was there ever a point in your career where it waned slightly or decreased or lessened?
Never waned, never lessened. There was dips along the way. Definitely, there was times where you think, am I good enough to maintain this level? Like at Leicester, the expectations were massive. Got there, 20-year-old, don't care, in the first team, loving it. Every game you play, you're a promising player. Everything's good. Pretty much playing every week, and then all of a sudden you go from that guy to now 4 years later you've won a few premierships, got to a Heineken final. Now all of a sudden you're not the young promising player anymore. You're in the leadership group. You're a captain. The performance of the team is you have to take responsibility for that, because now the same performance that I gave when I was 20 is not good enough anymore. Now I'm 25 and I'm captain in the team, or I'm vice captain in the team. there's more expectation on me. So that's always difficult to deal with, because now it's not only your performance that counts, it's the performance of the team. So you have to take that on your shoulders and take that mentally as well. So that was always a tough period to sort of get through, and especially if you're having a dip in form, how can you be responsible for the team's performance and your own? And that's always hard with players. You see it a lot with players who, when they're transitioning from that young, promising player to, now you've really got to perform every single week.
You've mentioned captaincy there, and leadership. It's fascinating that you've gone there, because I think of all the kind of guests that we've had so far on the show, I think you may be the first where we kind of look at it in a team concept, right? And a leader who's got to, I guess, get the best out of a team. How do you go about shaping that? How do you shape a mindset where you can't just focus on your own game? What are like the tricks of the trade to get the dressing room to buy into a collective kind of mission, so to speak?
Yeah, it was probably something that I'd thrust upon me at a young age. Captained England age groups all the way through. Just whatever coach at the time saw something in me that that they thought that I'd be good at that, at bringing a team together. But probably through experience and whatever, I look back now and how I grew as a captain was massive. Probably in my younger years, it was more lead by example, lead from the front, carry the ball. By the time I got to Bristol, I wasn't the same player anymore that I was when I was at Leicester, but I was a 10 times better captain, if that makes sense. So probably towards the end of my career at Bristol, I probably wasn't the best player in the back row or in the pack, but I could make players around me better with the way that I could bring the group together and, sort of bring the team together. That was probably some of my fondest memories as a captain was what we did at Bristol in that time. But I sort of think sometimes as a captain, you need to step back and use the people around you as well. But when you're young, you want to do it all yourself, and it takes time to reflect and become better at that.
So, I mean, now we've sort of jumped into speaking about Leicester and then a little bit about Bristol as well. I'm really interested, Jordan, to hear as a winner of numerous and consecutive titles, what does it take to be a winner at that level and to win consistently? And what did you learn from the losses? Because there were also some big kind of defeats, weren't there, as well, thrown in there?
Yeah. So we, as I said, the pressure at Leicester was one of the things. It's probably at the time it was one of the only cities where the rugby was bigger than the football, until Leicester went and won the Prem back in 2016. But for me, one of the unique things about Leicester and one of the unique things about sort of being a champion or a champion in a team, because obviously you're reliant heavily on everyone around you sort of having the same mindset. And when I reflect now about Leicester, it was probably one of the toughest environments. Like if you ask anybody in rugby, what's one of the hardest environments to go into, it would be Leicester. Very physical, attritional training. It was like playing 2-3 games a week just in training. We'd regularly fight and scrap and everything. And you know, the stories that come out of there are you know, in sort of folklore of how tough it is. But one thing that we had was almost everybody had that common goal and belief in what we were doing. It was like unwavering. Like we'd go to an England camp, and like you're going to England, and we'd be there and we'd be like, well, you know, we don't do this at Leicester. And like we thought that what we did was better than anyone else. No matter what we did, the way that we trained, the game plan that we played was better than anyone else. And in reality, was it better than anyone else? No, it would probably had more flaws than anyone's system. But what we had was 30 guys who believed in it 100% and executed it with maximum intent at all times. And then the mindset then was, I remember, like, this is just like a small thing, but it was like nobody ever asked when the season was going to finish. Like, it's not like football where you have an end date. Like, that's the last game of the Prem and that's it. In rugby, you've got your playoffs and then you've got your Prem final. Like, nobody was like, oh, well, if we don't make the playoffs, when do we finish? Oh, well, if we got knocked out in the semi-final, when do we finish? It was just like your finish date is the Prem final. That was like a given. That was like not even spoke about. That was just the end date. You booked your holiday after the Prem final. Where you go to other clubs and it's like those are the questions that you ask. Oh, well, if we do make the playoffs, then what's the crack? If we don't make the playoffs, are we going to train for a week before we go off? Because obviously there can be a long period there, and then we'd be back into pre-season. There's all sorts of questions. At Leicester, it was just a given that we're getting to the Prem final, and that for me, that is one of the things that made us successful. That we just believed 100% that it was going to happen and we were going to be there.
And I mean, it really sounds like a brotherhood that you had going on there, like a really tight knit unit. Was that philosophy and mentality? Was that coming from the top down? Was it from the bottom up? Was it everybody just together moving as one force?
Oh, 100%. It was it was like that. But don't get me wrong. It was sink or swim. There was many people who came in and didn't last very long, and it was a lot different to how it is today. Obviously, society changes, teams change, but it was ruthless. It was really, if you weren't up to the job, you'd be told, and you wouldn't last very long. And that was driven from the top. That was driven from the senior players. That was everywhere. So what we always had was a core group of people in that senior group. So obviously, when I first came in, we had the likes of Martin Corrie, Ben Kay, these sort of guys who drove that, Julian White. And then as they sort of phased out, then it sort of became myself, Tom Croft, Ben Youngs, Tom Youngs, Dan Cole, these guys to then drive the standards of what we're doing. So it just had that transition with it. And it just always happened. It was one of those clubs where everybody stayed for a long time. The expectations were set out. There was never any goal setting at the start of the season. There was never anything, oh, well, we'll make top four. There was two goals: win the Heineken Cup and win the premiership, and that was it. And if you didn't win those, you weren't successful. We lost in my second year there. Brought it to life for me was we brought in a coach called Marcelo Lafreda. He'd come from Argentina. Argentina finished third in the World Cup in 2007, which was massive. So he's come to Leicester for the following season 07, 08, we got to the premiership final and lost, and we got to the cup final, like the Anglo-Welsh Cup final, and lost, and he got the sack. So that was that all of a sudden it was like, well, that's the level. If you don't come back with a trophy, chances are that you could get the sack.
What you've just kind of hinted at there, and then as you were talking, I was thinking about Jose Mourinho's Chelsea. I was thinking about Alex Ferguson's Manchester United, and recently I interviewed Bromley's manager actually, and he was talking about trying to raise the levels at Bromley, and he said, you know what, Mash, Manchester City never get bored of winning. And I just wonder what you just described there about Leicester. Would you say that was the kind of mindset at the club, like you never thought about losing? And is it that simplistic that you just expected to win, and that creates a mindset of we're going to obviously have to put the work in, but it creates a mindset of we are not losing matches?
Yeah, and there was games where we should have lost and we won because, you know, we were like, the thing with Leicester at the time, you were off the back of guys who had built the reputation of the club. There was almost like a fear factor of people coming to Welford Road, and you know, if we lost at home, it was the biggest thing ever. Like we'd lose, like in my 10 years, we lost one European game at home. So, you know, that's a long time. And that was the mentality of it. You just didn't lose at home. You go away. Our mindset there was everybody hates Leicester. Nobody wanted us to win, and we were going to show everybody that we were the best team, and we were going to physically bully you, win the game, and that was pretty much it. And that was the mindset, and that was it for the whole time that I was there.
It sounds like there was a real level of accountability that came sort of within that group. I mean, is that the case? And were you naturally able to kind of reflect on your own performances, Jordan, and take constructive criticism, be open to it?
Yeah, like obviously now there's so much more footage and angles and all this sort of stuff. So the reviews weren't as intense and stuff like that. But what was intense? If we didn't perform, guaranteed we were getting it in training on the Monday or the Tuesday. Guaranteed. Like it wasn't like now you play on a Saturday, you'll rock up on a Monday, it'll be a clarity day because you've got to recover. Tuesday will be like your physical day and everything's like that. It was like we don't perform on a weekend, guaranteed Monday, we were out smashing the shit out of each other. And that was the level. And it was almost the mindset was like, we will go hard. If we go this hard at each other in training, then imagine when we turn up on a Saturday, how hard we'll go on people who we don't know, the opposition, people who we don't like, or they've got what we want. We want to win. So that was the mindset.
Jordan, can you go too far, right? And hear me out with this one. In terms of, is there a kind of finite time on which the intensity can last, right? And the reason why I'm asking this question is I'm thinking about that documentary that was done on the England cricket team. I can't remember what it was called now off the top of my head. And it was about their time under Andy Flower when they became the #1 team in the world. And the players kind of reflected on it and said, yeah, we were the best and he drove us really hard and our standards were exceptionally high. But looking back over your career, would you say that within that kind of mindset of being a winner, being a champion, that there comes a natural point where things level off and you have to find a new motivation, so to speak? Take that how you want. I'm just intrigued about that.
Yeah, and ultimately Leicester ended up hitting that point, and then it took them a long time to rebuild. Like as I said, my first 7 years, we were there 7 straight Prem finals, 2 Heineken finals, and then all of a sudden we started to get caught up. Teams started to catch us up. Teams started passing us, and then we struggled to, as I said, we had a belief in our game plan that, you know, it was the best and all that, and then teams caught us up, and all of a sudden our game plan wasn't as good, because now all of a sudden teams have got better players, they've got a better game plan, all of that. So now our physicality and our mindset is not carrying us anymore. And then for the next 3 years that I was there, we made the semi, we made the playoffs every year, but we didn't make the final again. And then obviously they had a real dip. I left in 2016, and it gradually, I think they made the playoffs one more year, and then it gradually started to nosedive. The club shifted their values of what they saw. They wanted to play more of an expansive, like attractive rugby for the fans, and all of a sudden it didn't match up with where they wanted, and then they wanted to be Leicester again 2 years later. But all your recruitment is driven them to go one way, and then they really struggled. They ended up finishing bottom of the table in the COVID year, and then Steve Borthwick come in and did an amazing job, and within 2 years they were champions again. So, you know, we did hit that sticking point. We did hit the point where, you know, and society changed as well. So what was acceptable and the way that you treat people, and the mindset and the mentality, younger people coming in didn't accept that anymore, and it sort of fell on deaf ears. And, you know, the brotherhood and the collectiveness, the sort of siege mentality sort of didn't lie with everyone anymore, and it could only carry you so far.
So, Jordan, you're our first guest on the podcast from the world of rugby. And rugby, to me, I mean, we're recording this whilst we're in the midst of a World Cup, a Rugby World Cup. And just watching it recently has reminded me just how demanding and physically brutal the sport is. And it just feels to me like a sport that takes more courage than any other to play. So I'm really interested, how has playing the sport impacted your development, or the development of your character and growth as a human being, as well as a sports person?
Yeah, no, it teaches you a lot of values. Do you know what I mean? You know, there's the respect piece, there's all of that, and everybody sort of associates with rugby, you know, the way that we treat the officials and stuff like that. But, you know, for me, it's not that. It's more around, how can you operate in a team? How can you be yourself, be authentic, and be able to operate with 30, 40 other people, and take instruction around, you know, that could be critical, like they can be critical of you, all of that sort of stuff, but then still turn around and want to play for that guy. You've got to put your personal feelings aside at times. It's all sort of life skills that, you know, not everything's personal. A lot of people now, you give them feedback, they take it very personally. But one of the greatest strengths is to be able to take feedback and then use it constructively. So that would be a massive one for me. Like, as I said, working in a team. So if I took this anywhere else, you know, I can slot in straight away. Like, this is, yeah, great, we can do that. I'm not sort of like isolated by myself, where, you know, some sort of people feel. But also, like for me, it's the discipline. I was pretty much on a diet for 16 years whilst I played. It's that mindset to just be able to go, right, I need to do this. This is what I need to do, and this is what I'm going to do to achieve my goal. And that's one of the things. And you see people now, there's so much out there that it's like they want it easy. They want the easy fix. They want it now, but they don't want to work for it. And probably it's one of those games that you have to work for it. You see how physical it is. You have to look after your body. You have to be in good condition. You have to go out there with a mindset that 100% that physicality, that play with your body on the line. Otherwise, you're going to get found out pretty quickly. Even if you're a couple of percent off mentally, you will get found out and it will cost your team. So you have to get yourself to that level every single week, knowing that your body's not at 100%. And that takes something that, if you take it into real life, like that's a game, but it sort of sharpens your mind to, if things do get tough, I've got the skills to deal with it and the mentality to deal with it.
You've alluded to, Jordan, a few times about things were, I guess, different in some ways when you came up through the system. You're a coach now. My interpretation of what you've said, and please correct me if I've got it wrong, is that it was probably a bit more dog eat dog when you were coming up. What are the differences you've kind of noticed from the other side of the touchline now, where you're having to shape younger players and help them progress through the system? What have you had to add into your coaching repertoire that probably wouldn't have, I guess not been needed or wasn't necessarily part of the coaching process or not as highlighted when you were coming up through the system?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, 100%, it was dog eat dog, and now you sort of look at what's the gold star sort of culture. It's like that high challenge, but then you add the support with it. We probably lacked a lot of the support, but it worked, and and it's one of those questions that everybody asks is like, what determines a good culture, or what makes a good culture? All these things, what makes a successful culture? Like Leicester's culture, as I said, was ruthless. Like it wasn't for everybody, and it wasn't all nice, and we weren't all friends all the time. And one guy would punch another guy in training, but then it'd be fine after. Where now you have to be so much more, supportive around those guys. So one of the big learnings for me is like, we'll all get frustrated at a time. We'll all say something that we don't mean in the heat of the moment, but how can I connect with that guy after to make sure that the message was right, or he understands why I was upset, or why I was demanding more of him? Because I feel now like a culture of players, they don't just accept me turning around and saying, do this. Like it doesn't work like that anymore. I think the more I reflect as a coach and sort of creating a group of people who are going to be successful and want to go on and do more, we have to collaborate with those guys. It's no longer just me or any coach going, do this, do that, do this, because we all need to feel part of it. We all need to have a common goal in what we're trying to achieve. So if they don't feel part of the process, or they don't feel, that they've had a say in it, then what are they playing for? Because they're not just going to play because I tell them to. So for me, that was one of the biggest growth areas for me coming out of play. And I probably sort of transitioned a little bit whilst I was still playing, and the mindset around it, moving from Leicester to Bristol. But for me, it's, as a coach now, it's how can we collaborate with the players and all be in this together to have that common goal, to feel like we've got something to get after.
When you spoke about what rugby has given you a couple of questions ago, Jordan, you were sort of touching on a lot of the insights that were given by James Kerr in the book Legacy about the All Blacks, you know, all those sort of qualities and characteristics. And it just reminded me when that bit when he's sort of saying that it could be argued that a lot of those amazing qualities needed to be an elite athlete are explicitly linked to character. So teamwork, motivation, attitude, effort. How important was character at Leicester? Did you see it amongst all of those individuals you were playing around? And also, do you put a focus on it now when you're working with young players?
So for me, like, if you put it this way, so if you took, I don't know, 10, 20-year-olds at the Premiership and put them up against the England squad, all the 20-year-olds could pass the ball, kick the ball, probably physically as good as the England squad. So what's the difference between the two? For me, it's mindset. There'd be so many guys who in the Premiership now, or maybe even in the Championship, who have potentially got a better skill level than some of those at the World Cup now who are with England. But why are they not there? Because of these non-negotiables that you're talking about there: character, effort, work rate, mentality. Like that's the literally the piece that you can't coach. You can try and lead them down that way, but you know, you either have it to some extent and grow it and make it unbelievable, or you're always trying to coax out of them, and then it just, if they can't motivate themselves, then you're struggling.
So fascinating to hear that, and you know, really good to hear you kind of confirm my initial hunch around it, because I do a little bit of work with young athletes, and you know, trying to get that message through to some is just banging your head against a brick wall. It feels like at times, and it's just good to hear you kind of say that it is internal, essentially,
Yeah.
but that it can be grown and it can be developed and can be progressed. Really interesting to hear you say that you were part of the football academy system as a youngster. I'll be really fascinated to get your take on the difference between the sports, because again, I think you mentioned it earlier, you know, we see the respect piece, a difference in supporter attitudes. You know, I've been to rugby games and opposing fans just sit next to each other and it's all fairly good natured. It feels like there's more humility in rugby to me. I mean, would you go with that? And what were the big differences that you've seen with your experience?
Yeah, so you know, one of the big things for me is that the fans can sit together, and you know, I'll probably say that, you know, the supporters in rugby, it's starting to creep in that, you know, the sort of we want it now mentality, same as football, that, you know, you're not going well, sack the manager. Like, it's you do have more time in rugby, but it's slowly becoming that way, and that's what happens as sport grows and gets bigger, becomes more demand. But for me, like, probably looking back, I probably don't really remember too much around the academy stuff. But my son now at the moment, he's going through it. So he's under eights in Bristol City and Cardiff Academy. And the thing for me is the expectation of the parents at that age is ridiculous. Like like not necessarily the behavior, but like the way that they, you know, go at the kids on the side of the pitch after you, like it's mad how serious it is at such a young age. And like one of the big pieces for me and for any young kid is like, can you do multi-sport? Can you go into a different environment and still be able to, you know, interact with the kids and perform and do that? So what we did with our lad, he played tag rugby, he did all sorts, and he'll probably do rugby again next year. But it's like, take them to a different environment. Don't just let them settle and, you know, they're comfortable. And like, 'cause that's like, especially if you want to get to a level that you're going to be good, you've got to be able to go into any environment and still be able to perform and thrive and not be intimidated by it. But yeah, like the big difference is if you went to rugby on a Sunday morning for under eights and you went to football on a Sunday morning for under eights, the difference is like two different like stratospheres.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo that, Jordan, because I played rugby at school, all the way from year 7 through to year 11. My school was very much a rugby union school, and football was I'm a massive football fan, but football was effectively banned at the school, and rugby was the sport that we had to play. And so I'm in this unique position where I totally understand the game, but don't actually want to play the game. But what I've always said about rugby union is that I felt as a kid playing every single year of my school life that it fostered a greater level of camaraderie that playing football on a Sunday didn't. And I'm trying to look back, and based off what you've just said, I'm looking back now going, why was that? And don't get me wrong, yeah, we wanted to beat other schools, but I just felt it was a bit more. It kind of sounds like airy fairy, but I felt like there was more kind of emphasis on go and enjoy the game, go and enjoy playing rugby, whereas football was more about go out and win with parents shouting on the touchline and so on and so forth. Is that too simplistic to look at it like that, or would you say there's an element of truth with that?
Oh, I don't think so. I think one of the, just like reflecting on it now, one of the things about rugby that I used to love was like you used to go in after a game, everybody would have a meal together, both teams. Like it would be like something stupid like sausage and chips or hot dog and chips, but both teams would get fed in the clubhouse after. So everybody was in there. And that was part of it. And you know, and it like simple things like that. Where I think with football, it's like literally like the team comes in, they go away, they get straight back in their cars with their parents, and that's it. And it's like more individualized because I want my son to be a professional footballer and I'm going to do this and do that. And instead of actually, well, can he be part of a team and a big part of a team? Can he actually enjoy it for he's there with his mates and all of this? And the thing I see is so many kids who don't actually look like they're enjoying it, which is a horrible thing to say. But you know, they don't need to feel the pressure of their parents at 8 7 8 years old. Where rugby, I think, is just because it's a late developing sport as well. So academies don't start till 14. You can see guys who don't even play till they're 16, and they develop and they do whatever. And obviously, most people who are athletically good in this country go and play football first, and then they probably fall out of love with it at some point, and then they pick up rugby or another sport. So probably it is more that the first so many years of playing it is just about enjoying it and falling in love with the sport instead of the expectation of the sport.
And just coming back to, mentioning parents there, we've talked a bit about helicopter parenting on this podcast with a few of our guests. And what advice would you have, Jordan, as a professional coach and a parent, for any parents who might be listening or watching us? What advice would you give them aside from the obvious, stop being a pilot of the helicopter?
Oh man, I think one of the things is you're always going to get frustrated with your kids, no matter what. Like, everybody's going to stand there on the side of a pitch and go, "What is he doing?" Like, flipping you, and everybody will have felt that. If you can just stand there and just don't care, then brilliant. But everyone's going to feel those frustrations. But it's like, how can you make it constructive for them? How can you make it that they still enjoy it? So something that I do with Hunter, we have like 3 goals for the training session, and then after it, you ask him, "Did you do it? Did you press every time? Did you stay on your feet?" Because he's always sliding in. And were you direct when you had the ball? And then afterwards, then you can actually go have a conversation with him. Well, did you press every time? And he sometimes might be like, "Yeah," and you're like, "Yeah, agree with you." And then sometimes he might be like, "Oh no, I could have done better." Well, work on that next training session. And then you've actually got something tangible instead of me getting annoyed because he didn't do the one thing or whatever. That you've actually got a discussion point with him in terms of, like, actually as well focusing him for training or whatever it is.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely love that. And just coming back to you being a coach now and sort of embarking on that journey, what in your opinion makes a great coach?
I think one of the things for me now, and probably in most sports, as I spoke earlier, you get so much more footage and everything now. You get quite a lot of laptop coaches who, they can tell you everything that was wrong with something and everything that needs to be done better, but after the fact. And it's for me, it's more around the feel and the can you connect with the player, and can you connect with somebody different, and can you understand how they feel in that moment and why they might have made that decision. So connecting that, and then, as I said, the big one for me is the collaboration with the players, and it's not every player. Like, so obviously retired in lockdown. I took over the academy, coached the academy for 3 years at Bristol, and then for the last 2 years, I'm the defence coach with the first team now. So what I did, the first thing that I did was I made them apply, but I appointed 5 defence captains because I wanted these guys to be the heartbeat of the defence in the group. So we meet every week. They help deliver the messages and drive the messages that we want as a group to the team. So, all of a sudden they've got a touching point with me. We plan out the week. What are we going to do? 100% buy-in from them. So then they can then drive those messages to the team. So when we talk about collaboration, I'm collaborating with those guys who then collaborate with the team to give us the best outcome. Instead of me standing up there going, "We need to do this, we need to do that." I'm not playing. So no, it doesn't matter what I say because I'm not playing. I can't affect it on a Saturday. So I need these guys to be right on it, to be able to first of all buy into it. Like I said before at Leicester, you need a group to buy into what you're selling, Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. So for me, it's the big piece around knowing how the players feel, but with a collaboration and knowing when to push and when to pull back, like having that feel of the group instead of go, push, keep pushing, or they all drop off, or we go too easy and we don't push them hard enough that we don't maximize what they've got.
It sounds like a real kind of collective of responsibility. You know, a lot of individuals with responsibility within the overall collective, which sounds like it can only be a positive thing. Just before we wrap up, Jordan, I think one final question from us. Working in the academy for those couple of years that you did at Bristol before moving into the first team, what sort of challenges did you see young aspiring sports people facing? And were there any kind of qualities that you were trying to instill in them to make them better people as well as better players?
So I think one of the big things for me was the mindset piece, was almost what we touched on at the start. So when I went in, the academy had won 4 games in 7 years in the Premiership Cup, and so all of a sudden we wanted to become, and they were losing by 50s, 60s. It was like, how can we get a group to turn into a winning team? And it wasn't because we didn't have the players and they didn't have the talent. It was more because the focus was always just, oh, enjoy it. But as we spoke earlier, it starts to become serious now, because these guys in a year's time will all of a sudden be in a professional environment with expectations so high. So it's like, how can we prepare these kids? One, if they make it as a professional, to be able to cope with the demand and the pressure. So bridge the gap between professional and these guys. So, they step up into the senior environment. All they're thinking about is, their game, instead of, I need to learn this, I need to do this, a million things. But also by demanding that standard, it will help all of the kids, no matter what they go into next. They go into university rugby, they go into, the discipline that I spoke about. Like, how can we give them that attitude that they can be disciplined, they can, succeed, they can see if you work hard, you get results. So, we can make them better people as well as better players and bridge the gap, because there's only going to be a handful of players who actually go on to be professional, but can they also be part of a team that's successful? Because some of my fondest memories of being at school and us winning the national championship by 50 points and us not losing a game in 2 years. So it's like, how can we give these guys the same experience? Within 3 years, we won the Academy League, the premiership of the academy. And now these guys, they're all on a wall, like a big picture of all these guys at the training ground. That, there's probably 6 of them who are still with us, but the rest of them, they will remember that experience and that moment for the rest of that it would probably be their best experience of their rugby career.
Listen, Jordan, you couldn't have ended the episode in a better way. Even if you tried, even if you'd written something down, you couldn't have ended it better than that. But listen, that's been a real education, and I mean that you've taken us on a journey there, not just from your kind of own development as a player, but into the coaching world and kind of your philosophy that you're trying to impart on those in the game itself, developing that mindset of a champion. And like I say, I hope those listening to this episode have kind of taken on board the gems that you've dropped about shaping champions and the best way to go about it, or certainly how you've gone about it. And it's one that has led to great success, I must say. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Jordan. Much appreciated. This has been another fascinating episode and edition of the Shaping Champions podcast. And I should give you the last word, Jordan. We always like to give the guests the last word. And even though you ended it already in the best way you could, any last words before you go?
No, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Top man,
Absolute
Jordan.
pleasure.
Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant, man. Thanks so much. Guys, please do follow us, subscribe to us, like, share on any platform, whichever one you're listening to us on, watching us on. Follow us on social media at Shaping Champions Podcast. We'll put Jordan's details down below in the description if anyone does want to reach out to him or maybe connect with him. And we'll see you again next time.